When we're using generative AI, we should think about using it to support human reasoning, to help human beings solve problems, not necessarily just to give them answers. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why we want to do that. Well, we want to focus on helping them solve a problem as opposed to giving them answers. The reason is because when we're helping them solve the problem, a big part of what we're trying to do is to help them reason, help them arrive at the solution, not replace their reasoning. And a lot of what we saw when we started with generative AI was that we ran into problems because as a society, we started seeing people, use it to cheat. They started saying, well, it's just going to make everybody dumb. Everybody's going to use it to generate all the ideas. Nobody's going to think anymore. And we do not want to go there. We want to think about creating custom GPTs that help people solve problems, that help people get things done, that help people learn, that help people be more creative. We don't want to have people thinking less. We want to think more, not less. Now, how do we do that? Well, we focus on augmented intelligence, where the goal is to have the custom GPT working together with the human to provide them with information, to provide them with perspectives to support their reasoning so that they can go and work through the problem. This is different than just giving them an answer. So what we're going to see in this module is a number of simple techniques that we can use to control the information that goes back to the user, how we present it, how we explain it, what we do and do not do in order to make sure that the user stays engaged and that their reasoning, their augmented intelligence is what we're working with, not just the artificial intelligence that's trying to give them the answers that they can check out. We're going to do things better. We're going to help them think better. We're not going to help them think less. If you're working with a knowledge base and you want to answer user questions or you want to solve problems for users and you really want them to understand why, but you also want to minimize your risk that you get it wrong, often the best thing to do is to provide citations from the document. And typically the very best way to do that is to actually provide the direct quotation from the document along with the page or other area within the document that it occurs. Now the reason for this is twofold. One, the user can see your description of the language and understand the exact original language, and they can read it and they can decide for themselves what the answer is. They can see it and think about it, and is this the answer? Two is they can take that supposed direct quotation, particularly if you signal to the user that is a quotation with direct quotation marks, they can then go and check that against the original policy. Or if you later find out that your custom GPT did something wrong, you might be able to ask the user to share the conversation with you. You can then see the direct quote that it generated, and you can go and compare it to the policy. Did it make some mistake in pulling out the quotation? So this is an example where I've done this. Now, I've done it outside of the context of a custom GPT. I'm just doing it in a conversation. So what I did to demonstrate this is I attach the Vanderbilt travel and business expense policy, and I say, can I get reimbursed for staying in a treehouse in the middle of the Amazon? Now, I say provide a series of direct quotations from the document as your answer, but do not provide any discussion. So what I want is I just want to know, is there supporting information that could help me reason about what the correct answer is? I don't want it to tell me the answer. I want it to provide me direct quotations. I don't want to be influenced by what it says. I want to read it for myself and I want to decide. It goes through, it provides the direct quotation in quotes right here. The costs of ride-sharing services and non-conventional lodging opportunities are allowable expenses. That sounds like I could probably get reimbursed for it. It then shows me where it came from and I could download the document. And then if I really want to fact check it, I would then open up the document and I would look for this direct quotation. Does this really exist inside of the document somewhere? It allows me to do consistency checking. And this can be really, really helpful in knowing it got it right or it got it wrong. If I can go and check that that thing actually exists. Now, what I might want to do is I might want to tell it, if all of the following are true, I believe these are the correct quotations from the document. Here they are. If all of these are true and you can find them and verify them in the document, then the answer is. It depends on how much you want to hedge your bets. But you want to provide facts that the human can look at and reason about. You also want to provide facts that you can go and fact check later and are things that are easy to go and match up. And often one of the easiest things is to search and try to find text that exists. Now in this case, I know this happens to exist in the document, so it did a good job, but it makes it so much easier for me to know what's correct and not if I can have it list facts and things that I can easily go and fact check. But also, if we show the user the original language, often we can let the user make an appropriate decision based on what they read, rather than running the risk that it goes and explains things in the wrong way or does something else. So as much as possible, we want to try to use direct quotations, ask it to cite things, give information. A simple way is just say, provide direct quotations. Provide direct quotations. That is a simple way to get things that you can go and trace back to their origin in order to know if it was right or wrong. Thinking carefully about how to present the information or the problems that the custom GPT is solving can be really, really helpful to your users. A lot of people just assume they have no control over the output and the structure of what the custom GPT does, but that's not the case. In fact, we can use the template pattern to actually help us customize the output and the formatting and make sure that it is consistent, but it's also relevant, presents the right information to the user first, that it structures it and formats it nicely, and provides some consistency. Now, it won't be perfect, but it can be much better than if we just leave it all up to the custom GPT and whatever it decides to do at the time. So I'm going to show you an example of this. I have gone and built a new version of the travel and expense policy GPT. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it output its information in a specific format. I'm going to say, help the user get answers to questions about the Vanderbilt travel and expense policy. Nothing new there. But now I'm going to say, you must always output your answers in the following format. So I'm going to use a template for it to output its answers. So here is my template. I'm using the template pattern. First, I'm going to say hash, and I'll explain this in 1 second, answer, colon, and then I give it a placeholder. I tell it insert answer, and I tell it can be yes, no, or maybe. These little vertical lines here, or pipes is another term to use to describe them, they're often helpful when you want to describe options. It has to be one of these things. So I say yes, vertical line or pipe, no, vertical line or pipe, maybe, and this is basically describing, here's 3 options. So I'm saying insert your answer, and your answer can only be one of these 3 things. And notice I'm using these sort of less than, greater than to provide a template. I'm basically telling it, this is where I want you to fill something in the template. Now, why did I have that hash there? The reason I have it here is because the format that this model is going to use to output formatted text is called Markdown. And this is a Markdown heading. So if you have something that starts with 1 hash, that is indicating a first level heading. If you have something down here like this with 2 hashes, that is a second level heading. So what I'm doing is I'm making it so that the answer is going to be a first level heading, and it's going to be followed by a second level heading that says supporting information. So I'm using my knowledge of Markdown. Now, I'm not going to give you a complete explanation of Markdown, but you can go and look it up. It's a great thing to use a exploration of ChatGPT for, is say, how would I format this in Markdown, and sort of explain what you're trying to achieve, and it can give you the Markdown that you could use. You can go and read guides, you can have it quiz you on Markdown, give you a tutorial, whatever you want to do. But the key is kind of knowing the structure. You describe what the formatting should be in Markdown. You create placeholders where you want it to insert information. Great one, less than, greater than, like I've done here. That's a great way. You can use other types of placeholders, but this one works really effectively. Inside of the placeholders, you describe what you want in there. And it doesn't have to be simple. You can say insert the name. You can say insert answer and then give it options like yes, no, maybe. Or you can do something else. Like for here, I'm going to say insert direct quotations from the document. And I also put this in quotations, just got to give it a hint that I want you to put quotation marks around the quotation from the document. Now, another thing I'm doing in this template that can sometimes work well is occasionally it'll interpret this too literally, like you want one quotation. Even though you say quotations, it may still take it literally as one. ... is a great way of just kind of indicating, hey, I want a bunch of these, more than one, as many as you need, put them in here. And then I've got a second section, which is just discussion, and then a placeholder. Discuss the quotations and how they support your answer. Notice the sort of complexity of this placeholder. Is it just simple name or something like that? No, I'm saying discuss it. And not just discuss it, but discuss how they support your answer. So you can build an entire template using the template pattern that then guides the output of the custom GPT. So let's take a look at this in action. So I'm going to switch over to a conversation that I've had with it, and we'll see how this then works. So as you can see here now, this is what the output is going to look like in this template. So I said, can I get reimbursed for Southwest Business Select? It starts off with a first level heading, answer no. And that's what I told it to do. I told it to give me the answer, either yes, no, or maybe, as a first level heading. Then I told it, give me supporting information. And that supporting information should be a series of quotations supporting its answer. So in this case, I've got direct quotations in quotation marks from the policy that support the answer. And then finally, at the end, I told it to give me discussion, and I told it to give me discussion of how the quotations support its answer. So it's following my template from the template pattern in order to provide its answer. And this allows me to think about how to present the information to the user to make it most effective. I don't just have to let it be random or whatever it decides, but I can actually provide it the template that it's going to try to fit everything into. And my template can be rich, and I can have placeholders that describe complex, things that it needs to fill in, like how the supporting quotations support the answer. And I can also describe sort of constraints, like I'd like yes, no, and maybe for the answer, not a paragraph. I just want, simple words. And I can also describe formatting around headings and other things that can be done with Markdown. So the template pattern is a really effective way of controlling the output of the custom GPT and making it more relevant and useful to your users. A lot of times what we try to do is we try to take custom GPTs all the way to the end. That is, we try to eliminate the user too much from the decision-making process. But really, our goal is to help the user solve a problem, to accomplish something. And we don't have to eliminate their intellect, their decision-making in the process. We just need to help them solve the problem. We don't want to disregard all of their brain power. Let's tap into it so that we get better answers. So rather than artificial intelligence that's replacing our user, let's augment their intelligence in their decision making so that they can make better decisions or solve problems faster. Now, what does this look like to do this? Well, in a prior example with the output formatting, where I took the template pattern and I produced all the output in a particular format, I put in really bold type as a heading 1, the answer. And I don't actually think that's a good idea. And I'll tell you why. So for one, I am signaling, hey, here's the answer. And I am encouraging the user to some degree to just say, hey, that's great, I've got the answer, and go. And then I have supporting information down here. But you know what's going to happen? A lot of people are just going to look at answer in bold at the top, and they're going to say, great, that's the answer, and they're going to check out. And they're not going to look at the supporting quotations at all because they're sort of less emphasized. They're below it. They're lower in importance in the way that I've formatted it and shown it. And a lot of people also just like a quick answer. They don't want to have to engage themselves. So if you make it too easy, you will let the user check out. So let's think about a better way to do this that doesn't require, letting the user just check out. So I redid the GPT, but I said this time, here's the formatting. You're going to start off by saying, here is the relevant information to consider, and you're going to give it the quotations. So what I've done is I've reversed what I did before. I make the most important thing the direct quotations from the document that could potentially help support making a decision about this. I'm doing the opposite of giving an answer. I'm instead saying, here's potential relevant evidence. Now, Again, the user still wants to fact check this, they still want to look at it, these types of things, but instead of giving them an answer, I'm giving them text from the policy that could potentially support them making a decision. So I'm not like letting them just get off free. I'm letting them go and look at the policy and decide and think for themselves. And so this is a helpful thing. The other thing I do is then I give them additional considerations. So my goal, instead of letting them off the hook and just saying this is the answer, is instead to say here's relevant information, but here are some additional things you might want to consider and think about. Because I want my users thinking. I want them thinking carefully. I want them working together with the GPT, augmenting their intelligence and thinking through things jointly as opposed to just running off with an answer. And then finally, I do something else is I say, and if you need clarification, here's a human being or a set of human beings that you could go and talk to. So I am doing the opposite of just giving them a flat out answer. I'm expecting my users to think. I'm expecting them to reason about the information, and I also, on top of it, want to give them some additional perspective to think about when they're coming to their conclusion. Now, they may not get the right answer, but I think it's better to have sort of joint collaborative decision making where the user is having to decide, supported by the custom GPT. They're working together. Now, this is exactly what you do when you go get on a commercial airline, right? They have a pilot and a co-pilot, and they are there so that they can jointly, check each other, help make sure the decisions are better. There's no single entity that can be the point of failure. They both have to make a mistake, hopefully, for some major problem to occur. And we want something that looks more like that here. We don't want to just say, here's the answer and let the human check out. No, we want the human to check it as well. And we want the custom GPT to support the human. It gives them information. We should probably then tell the user, make sure this actually exists in the policy. We give them additional things to think about. We want to spur them to think. And then we give them human support if there's going to be some issue. Now, depending on your custom GPT, you may or may not need all of this. But often when our goal is to help the human solve the problem, not to give them the answer, we want them thinking and engaged. And this is a way that we can help them get engaged. Give them evidence to consider, give them things to think about, give them human support that they can go to. Don't just give them the answer and allow them to check out. As much as we would like to believe that our documents, our policies, all of the information that we're going to be giving the custom GPT is really clear-cut and obvious, the truth is in the real world, we ask questions about policies and documents all the time because they are not clear-cut. And because it's not clearly explained what is not allowed or what the process is or whatever it is. So when we're building a custom GPT, both with the instructions that we write into the prompt, as well as with the knowledge base that we give it through documents, we can end up in situations where the user asks something or requests a task to be performed where the answer is not obvious. And what we need to do is we need to draw that out. We want to make sure that our custom GPT does not go and make it appear as if there is one answer when there is not just one answer. Now, sometimes we might want this. If we want some creative GPT to come up with all kinds of wild ideas, great, do that. But if we're thinking about a business use case where we want it to be really accurate and really correct, we don't want to lead somebody down the wrong path, then we need to think about drawing out the possible contradictions or multiple interpretations of the either way to solve the problem or what the answer is based on the knowledge base. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So what I've done is I have designed a custom GPT where what I want it to do is when it lists the information, so as before, what I'm asking it to do is give us relevant information to consider, and we're getting quotations from the document. After giving the relevant information to consider for the question, I want it to list possible interpretations and list as many of them as it can think of. Now, the idea is that I want the human being to be aware if there is potential ambiguity. And I want it to try to draw out any potential ambiguity and present it to the user so it is explicit. So in this example, I say, can I get reimbursed for Southwest Business Select? If you actually read the Vanderbilt travel and expense policy, it is not actually clear if you can or cannot, because it depends on, do you consider this to be like an upgrade, or do you consider it to be first class? Like, it depends on your interpretation. And so I actually have had to ask that question before to know what the correct answer is. In this case, now I say possible interpretation, so it knows to go and list the possible interpretations, and I'm using the template pattern, and there are multiple possible interpretations. That Southwest Business Select is an upgrade, and it may or may not be. And then Southwest Business Select is the lowest available airfare. For example, what if that's the only flight? Can I go and take it? There's multiple sort of situations. Now, is this every possible situation? No, but the key thing is that there's at least two. So now the human being realizes, well, wait a minute, it's not obvious. And then we can say, please contact this address for clarification on this. And here's what you might want to ask them. So this is changing the game. This is making it more about informing the human that there are multiple possible answers. Now I'll go and ask a question that I know is answered. Can I rent a motorcycle? And it explicitly says right here, motorcycle rentals are not an allowable business expense. Direct statement from the policy. Possible interpretations, there's only one. Motorcycle rentals are not allowed. It's just not something that you're going to do. The human sees there is no other interpretation. Maybe there is. Maybe you could come up with something else, but probably not. And then please contact. But this is kind of a helpful way, is if there is potential ambiguity or multiple interpretations, think about, do I need to present those to the user? And if so, just present it and let the user think about it and know and be aware of the ambiguity, of the inconsistency, of the fact that there's multiple ways of accomplishing the goal or interpreting things. Although custom GPTs interact with text, it doesn't mean that our users have to type everything from scratch, think of everything from scratch. Yes, we can do the conversation starters, but we can do things that are more powerful than that. We can actually build entire menu systems. You can think of these as pre-baked buttons or options on a file manager type thing that you would have, but we can do it in text in really smart ways in our custom GPTs using the menu actions pattern. So I'm going to show you how to use the menu action pattern and show you how it can be a powerful thing that you can add to a GPT to add all kinds of things to help the user interact, discover what they can do, but also do things faster and more effectively. So I've got a custom GPT that I'm building the menu actions for. And so what I'm going to say is you're going to help Vanderbilt employees answer travel and business expense questions. Nothing big there. Mention to the user that you have a series of special commands that they can use if they'd like to know what they are. And then I say, you have the following special commands that can be run. So I'm defining a series of menu actions or commands that are pre-baked into this custom GPT. Special things that if the user types this in, it's going to know what to do automatically. Now, I'm going to define them with slashes. You can define it however you want. You could have them be stars, you could have them be hashtags, you could have them be @ signs, you could have them be whatever you want, but I'm just going to do them with slashes. I'm going to say /email. This is a special command. If somebody types in /email, it will do something special. And here's what it's going to do. It's going to generate an email to your financial unit manager with detailed information about the question you need help answering. So the idea behind this is like, if you can't find the answer, you can email your financial unit manager with a complete summary of what the question was. Options with a travel item. So right here, I'm going to say options, and I'm having a placeholder for some travel item. And I'm going to say list the allowed options for that travel item that the user has specified and list them as bullets. /rules in expense type. Provide direct quotations from the policy that lists rules related to the expense. And then the last one is /pre-approve. Create an email summarizing what we discussed that I can send to my financial unit manager for pre-approval and verification. So I'm creating a menu action, a series of menus, basically an action items that a user can invoke to get something done faster or better, but also to discover things that I might be able to use it for. So I can pre-bake a bunch of commands that might be incredibly helpful to the person and they don't have to think them up. And I also don't have to make them conversation starters because I might not want them to be starters. I might want them something They can access it any time in the conversation. So let's now see this in action. So we'll switch over here to this conversation. We've now got our conversation going with this GPT. Can I reimburse for Southwest Business Select? We get an answer like before, but now it gives us a hint. Would you like to know the specific rules from the policy regarding air travel expenses, or help drafting an email for pre-approval? And I'm going to say, what else can you do? And I could have made it more explicit so it listed all the actions at the end of every prompt. I didn't do that. Now it says, well, here's the things I can do. And it lists all the commands, /email, /options, /rules, /pre-approve. So now the user knows here are other things I can do with it that it already knows how to do. So let's do the pre-approval thing. I just asked about Southwest Business Select. It gave me an answer. I want to get pre-approval for Southwest Business Select. So what I told it to do is creates an email summarizing our discussion that you can send to your financial manager, unit manager for pre-approval and verification. So I'm going to run that command /pre-approve, and now it drafts the email for me. Subject, request for pre-approval of travel expense, Southwest Business Select. Dear financial unit manager, it has the whole email describing what it is. I understand that our organization typically reimburses for economy class travel, but I believe that the additional cost of Business Select can be justified due to, and it says to fill in the potential reasons why. Now I can also go and I can say, well, give me options for ground transportation, things that are approved within the policy. And that's one of the menu options. And now it says, here's rental cars, taxis and ride shares, personal vehicles, public transportation. So I can look at all the options I have there that are allowed. I'm going to say, okay, give me the rules on ride shares. Again, another action. So I do /rules, ride shares. Now it says Vanderbilt travel with menu actions, and then we see used for business related travel, receipts required, economical choices, safety and compliance. So it's running my actions. Basically, the user now sees all these things they can do. I can start running through them. It also makes the user's interaction faster and shorter, because all I have to do is type /something and something complicated happens that would require a longer prompt. So if you think particularly about internal use cases, for example, like when you want to go and help operational efficiency, well, one simple thing you can do with a custom GPT is build a bunch of menu actions so people don't have to type in long prompts or worry about getting them right or wrong or knowing what to do. You just say, here's some options, and they can type in / a short word and have a whole complicated thing happen. So the menu actions pattern is a really powerful one with custom GPTs that can help you build interactive GPTs with sort of all these different pathways and commands that can be run. You could actually have probably hierarchies of menus, all kinds of things, but it's something absolutely worth exploring and thinking about how you can build it into your ChatGPT. We can help humans solve problems by helping get them in touch with other human beings that can give them the answers or solve the problem that they need solved. We don't always have to just rely on generative AI to do everything. So a simple way to tap into this in a custom GPT is just provide contact at the end of every answer. That is to say, here is a human or other contact that you can reach out to. Here's a frequently asked questions that you can reach out to. Here's a human being that you can call. Here's a set of human beings that you can email. Here's where you can put in a support ticket, whatever it is, and we can have intelligent routing. We can say, if it's a question about this, you should direct it to this place. If it's a question about that, you should direct it over there. If these circumstances are true, tell them to submit a ticket and that somebody will get back to them. But we don't always just have to rely on generative AI. So always, it can be very helpful if you have the capacity, if you already have a human element to this, if you already have somebody who answers questions. For example, in the university, we have advisors. We have people who do, undergraduates, they help the undergraduates answer questions that maybe even the advisors don't know the answer to because it deals with registration or something else. We should direct wherever possible our users to those experts so that they know where to go if they are at all unsure. And a simple thing we can do is just we tell the custom GPT at the end of every response, list contacts or list the relevant contact or direct them to one of these resources that seems most appropriate based on the question that they asked. We can rely on the GPT to get them to the right person or to get them to the right external resource that might have additional information to solve their problem. That is, the GPT can be a router. It can be a connector that gets them to the right place. A lot of times we have people who they start here because they don't know what else to do. It's what they found first, but it doesn't mean that they want to solve the problem through interacting with generative AI. They want to potentially talk to a human being or read something or do something else. So we need to have an escape valve for our users wherever possible to either be routed to other human beings, email, phone, ticket, or to external resources like frequently asked questions, additional web pages, books, whatever it is. We don't have to solve the problem completely within the GPT. Often we can route them to the correct place, be it a human being or some other resource, to get the answer.